Welcome to the Litigation Psychology Podcast, brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. Dr. Steve Wood, joining me, Dr. Bill Kanasky. How are you, Bill?
Always a pleasure. Dr. Wood, how are you?
Good. I'm glad to get back on the podcast. I had to carve out some time to get back on here, but here
It's
I
been
am.
crazy. It's been total chaos. But yeah, it's been crazy busy. But you know what we're doing today? This is my favorite thing to
I know,
do.
mine too. Viewer mail.
It's my absolute favorite. Viewer mail
Yeah.
or listener mail. By the way, our YouTube channel is over 10,000 subscribers. It's like 10.5K.
That's awesome.
It's tremendous. I can't believe people actually want to look at us as we do this. Like listening. I can see listening to us would be really good, but having to look at your mug and my mug, oy.
Yeah.
10,000 people I'm very confused about.
Sometimes I even hear from people, though, that they have to take breaks because they can't listen to our voices anymore either, though. So
I don't blame them. Hey, I got two major announcements before we start in the mail.
all right, what is it?
Okay, number one, and you know this, and I have alluded to this on previous episodes, but it's the Kanasky Man Cave is back.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's officially back. It's been like 2 years. I used to do the podcast over there until I got booted. It's back. I've sent you pictures. Okay, now it's a full gym. It's decked out. I sent you the picture yesterday. The leg press / hack squat combo machine has been delivered and assembled. I used it yesterday. I cannot walk today. I had trouble getting out of bed this morning. I took that first step like, it's no joke. By the way, the hack squat, leg press, fun. Hack squat, oh no, it's no joke. It is. If anybody knows the hack squat is no joke on those quads. So that's going very well. It's cleaned. I touched up the paint. I got my dumbbell rack set up, and then I got my Prime Fitness single stack coming, which is going to give me the lat pull down and the rope capability. So that's the final piece to this puzzle. But I am open for business over there. My older son, his friends were working out yesterday. Big deal to get my sanity back. Number one. Number two major announcement is just a big thank you. I announced this a couple weeks ago on the podcast, and Steve, you know this. My son Dean did have ACL and meniscus, pretty much full knee reconstruction. We're in week 2. So many people have reached out, emailing me and texting me well wishes. So tough road, but we're doing well. I feel terrible for this kid, but man, it's a beast. Every day he's got to go to therapy twice a week, but then do the at-home exercises and stretches and soft tissue massage that I have to do with him. He's not weight bearing, so like he's on crutches, and so it's a big deal. He has to finish his school year virtually, which is an epic pain in the ass. Can't see his friends. It's gonna be a rough summer here at the Kanasky compound. However, I went out and I bought a training, like the athletic training table you sit on and do physical therapy. I went out and I bought a used one for $100. It's in pristine condition. They're just getting away from it. So so between exercise bands and weights and all his rehab stuff, my whole house just kind of looks like one big rehab center. So it's
It's good, good and bad. I mean, I would say that your new workout place rivals some hotels we stay in.
Oh yeah, no, it's better. It's better than in New York City.
I knew you were going to go to New York. Yeah.
Oh, it's much better. You just wait till the next time you're in town. Because I'm gonna make you go on the hack squat, and it's not gonna be pretty. I can assure you of that. So those are my updates. Let's hop into some viewer / listener mail.
Yeah. So I'm going to start right off from the top. You know, that we talk about, it says, you guys talk about witnesses owning the bad facts and not trying to insert additional information into the response. However, I'm worried that my client won't be able to get their side of the story across because we may not have a chance at trial. I know you got some thoughts on this.
I got some. Okay, well, listen, we work with a lot of attorneys. And the vast majority of them don't want to show their entire hand at deposition, number one. They don't want the full story coming out, number one. So, meaning there's no reason to be volunteering our entire trial strategy at deposition if it's not specifically asked for. So, volunteering that information, I don't think is going to help, and many of our clients agree with us. We also know that when witnesses force in information, yeah, but, right? No, because, they go in the fight or flight, and then they can't reel it in. And then every answer is either argumentative or it's defensive or it's evasive. And it looks terrible, meaning you may feel good emotionally as a witness to get your story out. The problem is the manner in which you're doing so is usually overplayed. You're typically coming across in a defensive or argumentative or an evasive way. And if that's on videotape, it's not going to do you any good at trial, right? And then many of our other clients, attorneys say, listen, if I want to clear anything up at the end of the deposition, I can ask a couple clarification questions to get out whatever I think needs to get out. So, and again, I've heard this kind of here and there, but you know as well as I do, if the witness got their entire story out of depth, that's not going to change a whole lot. I think it leaves you vulnerable. I think it allows the other side's expert to use all that information to prepare for trial. Now, if the questions get asked, they get asked, but I'm not so sure that volunteering and inserting a bunch of additional information, I think that's trying to win the deposition, which you and I both know is not possible.
Yeah, and what I always find interesting as well is that a lot of times when I talk with witnesses and say, "Hey, do you have kids?" and they say, "Yeah," and I said, "Have you ever had your kids tell you something?" and they say, "Yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but," and they always laugh and say, "Yeah," and I say, "Well, what do you always think comes after the but?" And they're like, "Everything after that it's all BS." I'm
It
like,
is.
"That's exactly how you sound when you're doing yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but in a deposition. So you sound like your kids. So I mean, if you know what it looks like and knows what it feels like, that's what you're doing, and that's what it looks like to the outside observer."
And it's astonishing. Okay, now I'm going to go off.
Oh boy.
We're not even 5 minutes into this deposition. This whole pivoting concept, it's the most idiotic thing I've ever seen in my life. It's crazy. It's crazy. You think a witness, you're going to teach a witness to out argue a seasoned veteran trial attorney? You really think that's going to happen? In fact, and Steve, you and I, you can talk about this too. I cannot tell you how many times this year alone I have been called in to prep a witness for trial who was instructed to do this shit in deposition, and it's a disaster. The
Yeah.
videotape's a disaster. The transcript's a disaster. And the plaintiff attorney just eats these witnesses up. I mean, see, have you ever seen it work? Have you ever seen it work?
No. No, I
No,
remember
once.
you and I were just talking the other day about I
Yeah,
was watching the deposition transcript and thought, this thing is a disaster right now.
disaster. They're arguing over everything, everything. They can't even admit to basic facts. Oh, speaking of Karen Reed, you watching the Karen Reed updates?
Yeah, I was just watching it right before I jumped on
Are
here.
you watching the cross examinations?
Yeah. Pivot,
Oh my
pivot, pivot,
God,
pivot,
it's
pivot,
like they're
pivot, pivot.
pointing out clear, concrete facts, right? It's like you just the one cop, right? You, after this happened, you destroyed your SIM card, you smashed up your phone, you put it in the trash bag, and you threw it in a dumpster. Isn't that true? Yeah, but yeah, but yeah, but yeah, but yeah, but yeah, but, and he goes off. And so what does the cross-examiner do, which is brilliant? He goes, sir, it's a very, very simple factual question. I just want you to verify. Repeats the question. Witness goes, yeah, but this goes on for like 10 minutes. Finally, the questioner is like, okay, for the fourth time, I just want to verify a basic fact. This is not hard. Okay. You destroyed your phone, you destroyed the SIM card, you put it in the trash bag, and you threw it in the dumpster. Yes or no? And the witness goes, okay, fine. Yeah, that's what I did. It's like, well, Jesus Christ. Like, that's all you had to say the first time.
Right.
And you've eliminated this 10 minutes of back and forth, which just kills your credibility with the jury. Own the facts, own your conduct, because it stops there. It stops there. The moment you start running away from it or arguing with it, you just open up the floodgates to counterattack, and a good trial attorney is going to make you look silly. And the guy just looks silly, silly, silly on the stand. This is terrible.
Well, I think one of the other things to keep in mind too is getting people and witnesses to say yes, period, is you have to identify what all those different things are, right? Too often the attorney might know it, but the witness doesn't know it. And then when they hear about it the first time, even though you tell them to own the things, they have that visceral reaction and they go into fight or flight anyway. So it's going to a point of like taking the time to point out the 4, the 5, the 6 things that they better be ready for. And
Yeah.
then let them, yeah, but, because they always do in the training. They always, yeah, but there. And then you just get them to the point where they get the yeah, buts out then rather than getting it when they actually have to testify.
You want to mitigate the damage of bad facts, right? Own the facts. We've seen this in our mock trials. Okay. I mean, in focus groups, jurors respect people that own their decision making and conduct, whether it's good or bad. Society is very forgiving if you just own it. It's when you deny it, or you're dancing around it. It's just that's where the credibility goes out. So if you want your witness to maintain their credibility, they've got to own the facts. They can't run. They can't. You can run, but you can't hide. And the perception of that is what ultimately kills your credibility in the end.
Yep. Good one. All right, we'll move on to the next. I always tell my witnesses that we will take a break every hour. Should we be taking a break sooner?
Duh. I mean, I wrote a paper on this in 2019. Yeah, and so there's two reasons for this. So I've established through. I mean, I went through all the neuroscience literature, and it's crystal clear that on a focused task, that for example, testimony, right, a focused task, right, so you're going to see natural decreases in attention and concentration due to cognitive fatigue at roughly the 45-minute mark. So any breaks that go after 45 minutes, I think is pretty risky. And Steve, why don't you talk about how Zoom depositions we've learned that those wear down witnesses even much faster actually than in-person depositions.
Yeah, definitely. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners and viewers have had that now that with COVID, everybody's on Zoom all the time. And the longer you're on, the more it strains your eyes, the more you get fatigued. And, you just get tired a lot quicker than you would if you were in person. So even in a Zoom situation, you probably should be taking breaks, if not sooner than 45 minutes.
Yeah, I hit that at 40. They'll get another extra 5 minutes because the technology just really melts your brain, and you should all read up on it because it's really incredible how much work the brain has to do virtually as opposed to in person. Whole different ballgame. So what we find out, and this is where the Zoom or in person, when you're giving the witness the every hour break, they start making these silly fatigue based mistakes. 45, 50, 55 minutes. I've seen a couple of the recent deps. You ever get a dep from a client? They send it to you like for trial prep, and then you start looking at the clock and you're like, oh, like we're at an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
This poor witness is just done. And they're still going, because so one of the things is, which you always tell the witness, it doesn't work, by the way. What I'm about to tell you does not work. If you ever tell the witness, if you need a break, ask, tell me. They'll be like, okay, yeah. Witness brain's like, I want to get the hell out of here. Like, let's get this effing thing over, right? Most witnesses don't have the capability to self-monitor like that. Right. So you, trial counsel, you need to have that stopwatch on your watch or your phone and be pre-planning these breaks, and here's the whole key to everything, Steve. Take the break before the witness gets tired.
Exactly.
Don't wait until the witness gets tired and then take a break, because you're leaving them susceptible. And then Steve, why don't you also talk about what people should and should not be doing during breaks? Because I've seen crazy things during breaks. For example, if during the break your witness is returning phone calls and answering emails and texts, that's not a break, is it?
No. And that's what I always tell witnesses too, especially if you have people who are higher up in corporations and companies, is that you're off for the day. And when you're being deposed, for all intents and purposes, you're off. Nobody should be calling you trying to put out fires. You shouldn't be trying to answer emails. You should just be, for all intents and purposes, in a black hole.
Yep.
Because as you and I both know, how many times have we been in the middle of doing something and we get an email, we got to put out a fire. What happens? You get distracted and now you're thinking
What it
about
is.
the fire you got to put out rather than what you're actually focusing on. So trying to eliminate any sort of distractions for your witnesses and giving them actual breaks. And we're going to talk more here too about things they should be doing on the break as far as like breathing techniques and all that if needed. But definitely don't be answering emails. Don't be doing any of
Yeah,
that
because
type of
then you
stuff.
come back from the break and you're more tired and distracted than you were before the break.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. So you got to put those parameters around the witness.
But definitely I think the definite thing that we see though is that battle with 45 minutes that I think some people adhere to, but then other times everybody's so accustomed to the hour break and that they go to an hour, but a lot of times it's too late, right? Going back to you're saying is they're already anxious, they're already fatigued before that before they even get a chance to get a break, and then they've come too far. Now you got to try to reel them back in, which is difficult.
100%. And then as that deposition goes on, if you start lengthening that time period, they fatigue even more. That's why you see so many witnesses crash and burn the second half of depths. Is the fatigue is compounding
Hmm.
because they never got enough breaks beforehand. So yeah, maybe on that first hour where it's not crazy, a lot of background questions stuff. Maybe they don't fatigue as fast, but then the second hour, the third hour, the fourth hour, that's when it all catches up to you. So it's 100% preventable. And another thing I've heard, which I just think is silly, is I've had a couple defense counsel go, well, I don't want to tick off the plaintiff attorney.
I have heard that too. Yeah.
Who cares? It's your your witness. Say, we're taking breaks every 45 minutes because I said so. What are they going to do? Say no? By the way, how does the depth start? The plaintiff attorney, right, goes through the list of, right, if you don't understand a question, tell me, I'll re-ask, right? If you don't know, you don't know. All this stuff, right? If you don't remember, and one of the things is, if you need a break, just say so. I'm happy to give you a break. So take full advantage of that, because then if they go, well, wait a second, it's only 45 minutes. Oh, you told me whenever I need a break now.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for the defense counsel to prompt the break to go, hey, do you need a break? Yeah. All right, it's time for a break. Yes, it is. And the other side is going to figure out what's going on tough.
Yeah.
They want to listen. Fatigue is the oldest trick in the book. Wearing down the witness, it's been around forever and it works. So interrupt that process by inserting the breaks at the right time and not letting your witness get worn down.
Yep. Good one. All right. And moving similar to this, what we were just talking about, I was worried that my witness was going to get anxious during the deposition. We worked on alleviating the anxiety beforehand. However, when they got into the deposition, they still got anxious. What can I do next time to prevent this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a common problem, right? So, there's a couple different things. The appropriate amount of training is designed to minimize the anxiety, right? And so if you have a witness that's bouncing off the walls and they've been through some prep and some training and they're clearly not ready, they need more prep and more training, right? You can't send them in, you can't do half of the project, then send them in there and not expect them to, not get nervous. With any type of anxiety or nervousness, the only thing that reduces anxiety and nervousness is repeated exposure to the negative stimulus. It's the only thing. It's the only thing. There's nothing else. Well, I guess drugs, right? Drugs. So you can't drug up, you can't be giving your witnesses Ativan or beta blockers before the DEP. I suppose that would decrease anxiety, but they're going to be, it's a different problem. So how would you naturally decrease that? Well, number one, start your witness prep way early and identify your anxious witnesses, because some are going to be more anxious than others. And then I would do more prep sessions that are shorter to repeatedly put them through the process, expose them to these variables, right? Which will then naturally bring that anxiety down. Because if you're doing all the prep, Steve, right before the DEP, a week before the DEP, that initially, you have to understand, witness training, and you know this as well as anybody, it always gets worse before it gets better, every single time. Let me repeat that. It always gets worse before it gets better, because that's their first, their brain is seeing all this stuff for the first time. They're getting challenged on certain things. Their brain's going to have the most intense response to those first couple of exposures. So if those first couple of exposures are right before the depth, there's no time to desensitize and extinguish that response. This is operant conditioning 101. Right? B.F. Skinner would be proud. All right. So what do? You back up your timeline. 30 days would be nice at a minimum, and start that process early. So then all those anxiety responses will come out early, right? And then you'll start to see the decline in the second half of that. So as you're approaching depth, you should be in good shape. And here's the thing: if you're not in good shape, you still have time. You still have time to to work on things. During the deposition, if you, this is back to breaks, right? If you notice your witness, right, getting too riled up, getting too anxious and nervous, and you see those signs, then call for the break.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's you can and should do that, and you'll see some witnesses. It'd be nice if the witness can be trained to self-monitor. Some of them can, a lot of them can't, because they're too caught up in the moment. But you, the attorney, defense counsel, defending the deposition, should be watching your witnesses like a hawk, right? So what are some of the things? Well, if your witness starts increasing the rate of speech, sign of anxiety. They stop pausing and they start answering questions quickly, sign of anxiety, right? If you notice them kind of stuttering in their words and all that stuff, sign of anxiety. They may have physical signs of anxiety where their facial expression changes. The tension in their neck and back and muscles in their arms, you'll see that. You have to be ready to identify that and then pull the plug, get them out there, and then you can talk about some of the things you can do during the breaks to get them back down the baseline.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's really dependent on the witness too. Some witnesses will take to this type of stuff, others won't. But a lot of times I talk with witnesses about breathing techniques, visualization, being kind of present in the moment, kind of doing things to get more into your body. Now, like I said, you have to be cognizant of some people are going to take to it, some people aren't. But a lot of times I talk to them and let them pick whether they are or aren't going to do it. But at least you're giving them the tools and the skill set to do something to help alleviate that anxiety. And I think the other thing it does, not only is it helping to alleviate the anxiety, but it also builds rapport with you and the witness too. Because I've done it with a witness. I remember, I think I told you about this a couple of weeks ago, where I worked with a witness who was so nervous that he was actually sweating and visibly shaking in the middle of mock cross. We called a timeout, and I just sat with him for 45 minutes, and we just talked, and just talked about what was driving his anxiety. And we took the attorneys out of the room, and we just talked, not about the case, but just talking. And he said that was the most beneficial portion of the whole training, was just doing that.
Therapeutic.
Yes.
It's therapeutic. And that's why I want to do this shit right before the deposition. You do it early so you catch this stuff, and then you can give the witness home. I mean, Steve, how many times do you give the witness homework assignments to practice breathing techniques and stuff like that? Now, everybody at this point listening to the podcast is going, oh boy, now they're rolling their eyes.
Right.
Oh no, he's talking about deep breathing and Zen stuff and meditation. Let me share something with you. Let's go. It's baseball season, but Cubs off to a pretty good start.
Yeah.
Listen, they've been giving the Dodgers a lot of trouble, so that's a good thing, right? And Steve, you're the baseball player. Every single professional baseball player is taught the exact same techniques. Yep. Pitchers are doing it between pitches. When batters step out of the batter's box, they are doing their mental training every single time. Golfers, what do you think a golfer's doing before the 15-foot putt? What do you think they're doing? They're doing their breathing and their mental training before the putt every single time. Professional athletes, Steve. So, and that's how I sell it to the witness, is I'm like, what I'm going to teach you is what professional athletes do to keep their head straight during intense competition. Right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're teaching. It's the exact same thing that a sports psychologist would do with a professional athlete, correct?
Yeah, and I'm glad you called it. So everybody's rolling their eyes because that sometimes is the reaction that you get. Is this
Yes.
sounds kind of foofy new age Zen, but to your point, a lot of successful people do it. I mean, hell, I even do it before speeches. There's times that I do it in other instances as well. So I kind of say that as well to say you're not the only one doing it. In addition to
Yes.
athletes, I myself use it, so it helps to
It
normalize it a little
works.
bit.
And
Yeah,
there's a crazy amount of science behind it, hence why all the professional athletes do it. So,
yeah,
yeah, we can teach witnesses those skills if needed. Not every witness, needs it, but particularly your anxious ones, because as once the anxiety kicks in, it's really hard to get it down if it kicks in intensely, and then that negative thought process start, which then fuels the anxiety. It could be a nightmare, and that's what the athletes go through. I mean, Steve, how many times have we seen a pitcher in Major League Baseball get yanked in the fourth inning because they gave up a home run? Now they can't find the strike zone. They're pissed off.
all
What
the time.
what does the coach do? You're out of here.
Right.
Goes right to the bullpen. Now the pitcher's not physically tired. No, they're mentally gone. They're anxious. They're upset. Emotions kicked in. They're in fight or flight, and now they can't find the strike zone. Gone, done, over. Same things happens with the witness, right? So there's ways to prevent this. Again, start earlier in your witness prep, introduce this stuff early, and you'll be shocked how productive it can be.
Yeah, and one more thing before we go off that topic too is if you know your witness is going to be anxious and you need more time with them, you have to fight with whether you have to talk with the client
Yeah.
or do something, say this person needs more time, because I think that's one of the other things that you and I have run into where we know the witness needs more time. We know the witness is going to be anxious, and either the attorney can't get the time or we don't have the time, whatever. Then they just go in there, and then lo and behold, they get anxious, and it's like, what did you think was going to happen? We knew they were going to do that.
Everybody, well, how long is this training going to take? I'm like, I don't know. I'll tell you once we get started.
Yeah.
I tell you the average time, but every witness is different, and some need more, some need less.
Yeah.
It's all
All right.
psychology, Steve. It's all psychology.
Yep. Not no legal aspects whatsoever. It's
No,
all psychology.
that's all it is.
All right, moving on to number 4. My witness is getting argumentative and upset during mock cross-examination questions. Is it best to take a break or keep asking questions to help desensitize them before their deposition? I think that's an interesting question. There could be a couple different ways to look at it, but I want to hear what your thoughts
Yeah.
are.
Okay. Well, let's look at it scientifically. How about that? I think
Let's do
that's always
that.
the best way to look at things. Let's not get clever. Let's look at what science, right? So you have someone that's exhibiting a negative behavior, and you want to decrease that negative behavior. This is again back to operant conditioning 101, right? You have to punish the behavior as soon as possible to decrease future occurrences of that behavior. Okay? Meaning, if you want somebody to stop doing something, don't let them make the same mistake for 45 minutes and then say, oh, by the way, you've been a nightmare for the last 45 minutes, so let me tell you why. After they keep making these mistakes. If we're going to take a scientific, you and I wrote a paper on this, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, that you intervene immediately versus laying there, letting them, because here's the thing, right? If you let them continue to make the mistake over time, what are you inadvertently reinforcing?
The mistake?
The mistake!
Yeah.
The mistake. Because the brain's like, well, Steve's not yelling at me, so I guess we're okay. No, all right? I mean, right? You're sending the message of, yeah, this is okay and acceptable. And so when the moment that starts, immediate intervention. Now the punishment, right? Punishment, we're not going to beat up the witness. We're not going to beat up the witness physically. But so punishment in witness training is constructive criticism. To identify what's going on, identify where the emotion is coming from, right? Identify the mistake, work through it, back up that train, and then restart. Letting them go through that's not desensitizing them to anything. It's actually reinforcing the mistake, which is the exact opposite of what you want to do. Desensitization has nothing to do with there's no linear time aspect to desensitization in that respect. You want to desensitize witnesses from, say, aggressive or manipulative tactics by exposing them to that. But you don't have to expose them to that, for 45 consecutive minutes, have them fail for 45 consecutive minutes. That's not going to desensitize anything.
Yeah, that's like teaching someone to swim rather than putting them in the shallow part and letting them kind of wade in. You just kind of throw them in the deep end. Say, because you got to get desensitized. You got to learn how to do it, sink or swim, right?
Yeah, and then not helping them
Right,
for 45 minutes,
right.
thinking they're going to learn. No,
Yeah,
no, no, no. That's not smart.
yeah, agreed. All right, number 5. My witness has gone through the training process. However, the trial date just got moved. Do we need to do the training again? This is always an interesting question, right? We've already gone through it. Will we have more
Yeah,
time? They're good. They already went through it. They don't need it again.
yeah.
What say you?
This is a great question. The answer is yes with that with the caveat. So we're well prepared for this. Like, because Steve, how many depths get bumped? Oh
Wow.
God, I mean, it's an annoying number, right? And so what we do is we have them ready, and then say it gets bumped by a couple months, right, or several months, right? So then what we do is we plan booster sessions, right? So again, back to psychology. If you want them to retain that information, right, they're going to have repetition to keep their skill set up. And so what we can do is set up, whether it's 1 hour or 3 hours, right? There's a couple different ways we do those booster sessions so that they maintain the skill set and the knowledge that we've given them in the previous sessions. We can maintain that over time. The last thing you'd want to do, well, there's two bad things here's what you don't want to do. Number one, you don't just want to say, well, you've been trained, okay, in 3 months, just remember everything we told you the last 30 days. That's not going to work. There's going to be a decay, right? There's going to be a memory decay in the skill set. They won't have their skills sharp or up to speed, and they're going to struggle if that happens. Or don't let 3 months go by and then the week before the DEP say, okay, let's do the booster session now, because now you've had the 3. So now you're kind of, I'm not saying you're starting from scratch. It's just not necessary. So say if you had a couple months, I'd say, okay, every 3 weeks, let's have a 1 hour Zoom just to keep everything fresh, boom, 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 and then that will maintain it up until the DEP.
Yeah, and I've been doing a lot of that much more often now, and it's
Yeah,
surprising how when you start to do that, they actually keep some of that knowledge base, right? Rather than
it comes right back.
yeah,
It comes right back, but it has to be done on a regular basis, because once weeks and weeks go by, there's a natural out of sight, out of mind, right? I mean that's kind of what it is, and so easy. It's a very easy workaround. It just requires some booster sessions.
yep. All right, number 6. I don't want to stress out my witness before a deposition. Should I tell them that we won't win or lose the case based on their testimony? This is another common thing I see that comes up because a lot of times the attorneys don't want to stress them out. They just basically tell them it doesn't really matter what you're going to say to help alleviate the stress of the witness. However, I'm sure there's a caveat, and I'll let you tee off on this. The caveat to the thought process of you're not going to win or lose the deposition, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. So we see this with almost every witness. I think is that you have to have the right objective, right? And we just had March Madness, survive in advance, right? That means you just you want to survive this process. You don't want them to do any damage. They're not going to win the case in deposition. We all know that. They can absolutely lose it, though, right? I think you got to be honest with the witness on that. I think that's one of the first couple things that we tell them is, listen, you're not going to win this step, so don't try. Number one. Number two, you can lose it. You can lose it. We're going to show you exactly how you're going to lose it, and we're going to train you not to lose it, and to educate them on what the objective is. I certainly don't think you should tell them, well, it doesn't really matter either way. Everything's going to be fine. No, it's not. It's a difficult discussion. But again, if you're starting your witness training early, right, and you're at least 30 days out, that's the time you want that anxiety response, right? I mean, they need to know, what's going on in the case, how important their testimony is, what the true objectives are with the strategy, where do we want them to be on on certain issues. And so I think it's just a balancing act, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where I was going to go. Like, I think you don't want to over stress them out and make it sound like it's the end of the world. But at the same time, I think you're not being honest and fair with them if you tell them that it doesn't matter at all either, though. So,
Yeah, I think the balancing act is to say, listen, there is no such thing as a perfect deposition. You don't have to be perfect. You just need to be close. You just need to be close, right? And and talk them through that, but to tell them they're definitely every witness is going to make some mistakes. That's not the issue. The issue is when you're making repeated mistakes,
mhm.
you're making the same mistakes, and you're making catastrophic mistakes. So the biggest way to remember, this is my new phrase. Yeah, if you want to prevent a problem, expose the problem, right? If you want to prevent a problem, expose the problem, and literally tell them the things that can happen that will ruin everything, right? And so you can come up with various examples of those on what it's really more of what not to do, okay? And to also tell them, I think maybe the bigger issue, Steve, is something that also needs to be discussed because some of these witnesses they feel like the weight of the company,
Yeah.
right, is on my shoulders. This happens a lot with the corporate reps, right? Like I have so much like I have to perform or I'm letting down the company. Or some are even the I have to perform or I'm getting fired.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of kind of illogical thoughts that that can crop up. You and I wrote a paper on that too with the cognitive distortions. So I think getting their mind set on what the true expectation is will take off a lot of pressure. They're not going to be able to answer they're not going to answer all the questions to start. They're not going to know everything. They're not going to remember everything. That's okay. I mean, how many times have you been working with a witness, Steve, and they can't remember something or they don't know something, and they start kicking themselves in the ass? Go,
Yeah.
oh man, God, I should know this. I'm an idiot. It's like, no, stop. It's okay if you don't know something. Now, the caveat to that is if they're the corporate rep or the PMK or the PMQ, and they've been told what to know.
That's always, yeah.
Prior to the dep, well, yeah, the one thing you and I cannot do for witnesses is read documents and study, right? They've got to do that. But for fact witnesses, they have to understand this is not a Guantanamo Bay waterboarding session. Okay, it's not. They don't have to have every answer to every question. Some answers will be I don't know or I don't remember, and that's fine. But we have to work through that to see what do you really know, what do you remember. And they have to be okay with not having all the answers and not feeling bad about it. I just the new one of the new videos that you shared with me with the woman that totally takes the bait. So here's the setup. So the plaintiff attorney asks a question to the witness. The witness legitimately says, "I don't know." His response to that is, whoa, hold on. You don't know? That's your answer? And what does the witness do? Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
She goes on for like 2 minutes in this fight or flight, just spewing out information because she feels bad about not knowing. And it's like, she wasn't okay with not knowing, obviously, right? And that's one of those things where that's a psychological fight or flight response. They have to be trained for that. So she gave a completely legitimate answer. The cross-examiner set the bait out there and challenged her. Wait a second, you don't know? And all she had to say is, that's correct, that's my answer.
Right.
And then he goes away, right? But no. He used the threat tactic and said, wait, you don't know? What do you mean you don't know? And the moment he did that, boom, fight or flight. She's off and running and can't shut up for the next 2 minutes. And it became panicky. It was just a disaster. So there's just another example of expectations of the witness. It's okay not to know something. It's okay not to remember something. But every time you say that, there's going to be a counter maneuver. This is what you and I call counter maneuvers. This is what cross-examiners do. And sometimes it's wait a second. Wait, hold on. You're going to sit here and tell me you don't know? That's a classic one. It's a classic one. And if a witness is not ready for that, they're going to go into fight or flight, and then they're going to say anything to take away the pain of not knowing, and then they're going to say something harmful.
Yep. And one other thing I wanted to talk to you about kind of getting witnesses comfortable with the idea of being open and honest and transparent with them. I think one of the things, and I want to curious to get your thoughts on as far as having witnesses, whether they be corporate reps and even some fact witnesses, be at least informed on kind of the trial strategy, kind of what the case facts are, what the theories are. Because I think too often we see these witnesses come in and they don't really know how to put all the pieces together. The questions, how one question leads to another question, what the theory of the case is, what
Yeah,
our theory of the case is. They just are unclear about all that. So what are your thoughts about as far as informing them and getting them on the same page?
I think that's critical, because another kind of misconception is, so you have to educate them on, hey, there's multiple witnesses out there for us, okay? Your role is here. You have to carve that out, but to understand, because you've seen this too. They ask a witness about a different area that somebody else should be testifying about. And the witness really doesn't know the answer, to say, hey, we have other witnesses to take care of that. For example, if they're asking the HR director questions about safety, the HR director should be saying, I can't, that's outside of my scope and my training and my knowledge. You'd have to ask somebody over in safety, right? And know that they're not responsible for everything, and know the strategy when it comes, to things like that. And then there's kind of there's like an internal strategy for that witness, but then there's the broader strategy across all the witnesses. Yeah, that needs to be blueprinted out, because I think a lot of witnesses, you and I see this every week, they get baited into answering questions that somebody else should be answering, and they go ahead and answer the questions anyway, which can lead to disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's because they don't know who else is going to be carrying the water. So they assume that it's supposed to be them. But
Yeah,
if you,
yeah,
so letting them know. I think the other thing too is you get a lot of buy-in from witnesses, because then they feel like they're part of the process versus you guys called me
exactly,
out of the blue, told me to come in.
exactly,
So,
exactly. And so when this stuff comes up, you say, hey, when these questions come up, you can punt the ball, right? Joe over in safety is going to answer all these questions on the safety manual. You don't have to answer those, but they need to know it's okay for them to defer those questions to somebody else and not feel bad about it, because they will be challenged on it.
yep. All right. Last question on this. Are some witnesses just a lost cause? Should I expect a witness to go from a D to an A before a deposition?
I got this question at dinner on Monday evening. Um, for the most part, Steve, I've trained thousands of witnesses over 2 decades. Very few witnesses are a lost cause. Very, very few. There are a few that are, and there's specific circumstances that and categories those fall into, which we can get into if we have time, but that's kind of a whole separate podcast. But for the most part, I deeply, deeply think every witness can improve. I think the difference is everybody has different ceilings, right? Some people absolutely can go from a D to an A. That's 100% possible with some people. Other people, maybe a B minus is their ceiling, or a C plus. And you're going to figure that out through the training process. So I'd say, can every witness improve? Absolutely. Are they going to have different ranges of improvement, different ceilings? Absolutely too, because again, everybody's different, and some barriers are very, very difficult to get over. And there's, again, several examples of this, but everybody's going to have a different ceiling. But every single witness, with very, very few exception, can improve. It's just to determine, like, where is the witness's ceiling. Now, we you and I have, unfortunately, sometimes don't educate our clients enough about this, because they're expecting, clients want perfection, Steve.
Yeah.
They want every D to go to an A plus. And if they don't get to an A plus, they're mad. So you have to educate the attorneys, even the corporate clients, to say, that's not the goal here. The goal is to maximize the witness's performance. And the max may be a C plus.
Yeah.
It may be a C plus, whereas a different witness is going to be a B minus or an A, or, it's going to vary.
I think that's the key point too, is you might get them up to a C plus, but that's the best you can get. But I also don't like the idea of this witness is a disaster. They're a train wreck. We went through the training one time. They're not going to be any better. We don't expect them to be any better. So let's not do any more and just cut bait and just going to go into the deposition, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. I think
No.
there's you're going to have to.
In fact, because I gave a speech on Tuesday to a very large company and all their attorneys. It was a really good speech, and this stuff came up, and the purpose. This is what many people don't get until they go through it. The entire purpose of our witness training program is to get the witness to fail miserably. Let me say that one more time. The entire purpose of the witness training program is to get the witness to fail miserably, because that's the only way you're going to identify their true weaknesses and vulnerabilities and then be able to train them so they grow into better witnesses. The only way. You have to break that witness down. They have to fail miserably before you can rebuild them. Because if you're building on a faulty foundation, forget about it, right? And so, yeah, there's been several of times where the training starts off very rough. I think that's the greatest thing in the world, because now you've identified where all the issues are. Now listen, you could sugarcoat it, right? You could sugarcoat everything and then never identify the true weaknesses. Then they're going to go to depth, and the process is going to be smoother, but the depth's going to be a disaster. They have got to fail miserably during the first part of the training, because that's the only way that they're going to grow and be able to you can rebuild them. It's the only way.
Yeah. And so, like I said, going back to what we talked about earlier, is some of them will need another session. Some
Yes.
of them won't, some of them will, but I just don't think you can look at it as a cookie cutter of, okay, we're only going to do X amount of sessions with every witness, but if we know one's going to be worse, we're only still going to do those X amount. Like that person might need more and another person might need less, and that's okay.
Yeah, what I tell most attorneys now is, like, here's the minimum we're gonna get. Like, we're gonna know after X number of hours, right, where we need to go from here. And then sometimes you're like, hey, you know what? No, we're good. Or they're gonna need one more booster session right before. Other times you're like, nope, we found something pretty major here. For example, we found the witness has this deep resentment that no one ever knew about. Boy, well, now it's going to take time to work through that. Otherwise, they're going to torpedo this case, right? So you're going to find things along the way. You're going to expose these witnesses and these weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and that's actually a really, really positive thing, because then once you identify those, then you can design the program of training to prevent those things from rearing their ugly heads during the dep, and then come out on top. You may need some extra time, yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm not going to dive too much into it because Linda and I are going to come on and do another podcast after we wrote our 360 paper. So I'm going to save that. That's a whole nother podcast topic in and of itself, about identifying all these issues and what to do with them.
Well, yeah. Well, listen. My kid, again, we're on week 2 of a 9-month rehab program, right? And there's going to be a point where they're going to do some testing. You know how this goes, right? They're going to do some testing on him to say, is he ready to start running, or is he not ready yet? What are they going to do? They're going to do EMG strength testing, right? To literally measure, okay, the frequency from the muscles. They're going to do strength testing. How much weight, can he lift on, quad extensions and leg curls? You got to meet minimums to get to that next level. I mean, there's no way in the world that they're going to be like, okay, well, we're at 9 months. He's good. And they're not going to test for that, because they may come back to you and say, you know what? That quad is not firing the way we want to yet. Needs another 30 days of therapy, right? That's exactly how we do it with the witnesses. We have our goals, but we're going to assess, reassess. And if they're not where they need to be, we're going to be wide open and say, no, we're not there yet. Just like the ACL tear, right? We're not there yet. We need more therapy. And then they will get there. Because if you cut it off too early, right? What's the chance of a re-tear in an ACL that you haven't fully rehabbed?
Right,
Like
exactly.
80%, right? Well, so we don't want to do that with the witness.
Yep. All right. Good conversation.
Yeah, good
Glad to get
stuff.
on here and talk to you. Like I said, that this is always one of my favorite things to do because we always kind of get these questions and we get to answer a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
them that I'm sure
oh
that
yeah,
come up often and have other people have these questions themselves. So
yeah.
I always enjoy that. Well, we're gonna cut this loose. This might end up being a two-parter.
Oh,
This kind of time flew when we were having fun. So
how long have we been going?
it's been a while. I lost track. Probably close to an hour.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see. We'll check with our producer to see if he
Yeah.
wants to break this into two parts. But you know, if we have to, if we have to, have to. But I think all these questions were really important. They were all of them were very witness focused, which is a good thing. But Steve, you know, you and I, we see these things. We see these things coming up week after week after week, and so you got to deal with it, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us for another edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast. Make sure you go to YouTube, like,
Yes.
subscribe, get some more YouTube subscribers. Give us the thumbs up, 5-star reviews, leave us a review on any of the different podcast apps. We always appreciate any of the input and appreciate everybody who has left us emails and comments and stuff. We really enjoy
Yeah, I
our
think the
audience.
reviews are really important because I mean we're in year 5. We're doing something right. Okay, number one. Number two, I want to make this very clear because this has happened kind of naturally, Steve. I know it's happened with you. I think this is great, and we don't charge for this. I've had multiple listeners reach out with questions. Hey, I've got a witness. Here's what I'm dealing with. Can you talk to me for 20 minutes? Yeah, call me. Yeah, or set up a Zoom. We'll talk. You have questions? Call. Or I have this voir dire issue, right? I want. This is what I'm trying to tap into. How do I ask it? Call us, email
Yep.
us. We'll help you. I mean, we're not. I mean, you know, you need help. Yeah, then you may have to retain us. But if you just have questions, nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
Reach out. Don't be shy.
Definitely reach out. You can find B. Kanasky at courtroomsciences.com or S. Wood at courtroomsciences.com. Join us for another edition of Litigation Psychology Podcast brought to you by Courtroom Sciences.
That's it.